The rusty ladder groaned under their weight, each creak echoing ominously in the stillness. Jack went first, his flashlight cutting through the thick darkness, illuminating the path ahead with a faint, flickering light. Behind him followed Mark, his nervous laughter echoing in the confined space, a thin veneer over his growing unease. Two others, Sarah and Chris, trailed behind, their whispers lost in the stale air, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The air hung heavy and damp, thick with the smell of mildew and decay, a testament to the years of neglect. They descended into the belly of the city, into the abandoned metro tunnels, a place forgotten by time and shrouded in mystery. The steps ended abruptly, leaving them on a narrow platform, the dust swirling around their feet as they landed. Dust-covered tracks stretched out before them, disappearing into the impenetrable darkness, a void that seemed to swallow all light. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the rhythmic drip-drip of water somewhere in the abyss, a haunting melody in the dark. Jack ran his hand along the grimy wall, feeling the rough texture of crumbling concrete, a tactile reminder of the tunnel's decay. He shivered, a sense of foreboding settling in the pit of his stomach, a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. They ventured deeper into the tunnel, their footsteps echoing in the silence, each step a hesitant move into the unknown. The air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into their bones, making them shiver despite their layers of clothing. Jack shone his flashlight on the walls, revealing faded graffiti, remnants of a time when these tunnels pulsed with life and activity. Now they were a tomb, a silent testament to a forgotten era, a place where time stood still and memories lingered. He couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of eyes peering at them from the shadows, an unseen presence lurking just out of sight. They reached a cavernous platform, the vast emptiness stretching out before them like an endless void. Two tracks sliced through the center, leading to tunnels that yawned on either side like open mouths, ready to swallow anyone who dared venture too close. The platform was strangely pristine, devoid of the dust and debris that littered the tunnels. It was as if time had stood still here, preserving it in an eerie, untouched state. The air here felt different, charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. It was a palpable tension, a sense of foreboding that seemed to seep from the very walls. Sarah pointed to a sign, its paint peeling but the words still legible. Westlake Station. The name seemed to echo in the silence, a remnant of a time long past. It was an eerie sight, a ghost of a name in this subterranean ghost town. The station felt like a forgotten relic, a place where memories lingered, but life had long since departed. The silence was absolute, broken only by the frantic thumping of their hearts. Each beat seemed to reverberate through the empty space, amplifying their sense of isolation. The silence was unnerving, amplifying every rustle and creak that echoed around them. It was as if the station itself was alive, whispering secrets in the dark. "This is unsettling," whispered Chris, his voice barely audible. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to swallow his words, making them feel insignificant. Even his usual carefree demeanor seemed dimmed in this oppressive atmosphere. The weight of the silence pressed down on them, making it hard to breathe. He ran a hand through his hair, his face pale in the beam of Jack's flashlight. The light cast eerie shadows, making the station seem even more otherworldly. "Maybe we should head back," he suggested, his voice tinged with a hint of desperation. The thought of leaving this place was a small comfort. Mark laughed, a nervous tremor in his voice. The sound was hollow, echoing off the walls and fading into the darkness. "Don't be such a scaredy cat, Chris. It's just an old subway station," he said, trying to inject some confidence into his words. But his bravado rang hollow even to his own ears. The oppressive silence seemed to mock his attempt at courage. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something was watching them, its unseen presence growing stronger with each passing moment. The sensation was almost tangible, a creeping dread that made their skin crawl. The shadows danced in the periphery of their vision, creating an unsettling atmosphere that seemed to close in on them. Jack kept his flashlight moving, trying to pierce the darkness, but the beam seemed to be swallowed whole by the oppressive blackness. The deeper they ventured, the more the darkness seemed to consume the light, leaving them feeling isolated and vulnerable. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck, a feeling of being watched intensifying. Every step they took seemed to echo louder, as if the darkness itself was amplifying their presence. He turned quickly, shining the light down the tunnel they had just come from, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there. But the tunnel remained as empty and foreboding as ever. Something flickered in the darkness, a movement so quick it was almost imperceptible. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, shifting and changing. It was just a fleeting glimpse, a shadow within the shadows, blending seamlessly into the darkness. The uncertainty of what they saw made it even more terrifying, but it was enough to send a jolt of fear through him, a primal instinct warning him of danger. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. It wasn't human, not entirely. The shape was wrong, too distorted to be a person. It was as if something had tried to mimic human form but failed. It was taller, more angular, with limbs that seemed to bend at unnatural angles. The sight of it was enough to make his skin crawl. And it was watching them, its presence palpable in the oppressive darkness. The feeling of being observed was almost suffocating. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice tight with fear. The words barely escaped his lips, as if speaking too loudly would draw the creature closer. He kept his voice low, not wanting to draw attention to them, to whatever was lurking in the darkness. The silence around them was almost deafening, broken only by their hushed whispers. He knew with chilling certainty that they were not alone. The darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides, a living entity that hid countless secrets. The others exchanged uneasy glances, their faces pale in the flashlight beam. The fear was evident in their eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the danger they were in. "See what?" asked Sarah, her voice trembling slightly. The uncertainty in her voice mirrored the fear that gripped them all. She clutched Chris's arm, her knuckles white. The physical contact was a small comfort in the overwhelming darkness. Before Jack could answer, the shadow moved. It was a slow, deliberate movement, as if it was aware of their presence and was toying with them. It slithered out of the darkness, its form becoming clearer. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of terror through the group. It was humanoid in shape, but its limbs were too long, too thin, its movements jerky and unnatural. It moved with a disjointed grace that was both mesmerizing and horrifying, its eyes glowing with an eerie light fixed on them. The intensity of its gaze was paralyzing, as if it could see into their very souls. "Run!" screamed Jack, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. He didn't need to tell them twice. They turned and fled, their fear lending speed to their steps. They ran blindly, their backpacks bouncing against their backs, their breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature moved with an unnatural speed, its elongated limbs carrying it over the ground with terrifying grace. It was gaining on them, its heavy footsteps pounding behind them like a death knell. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever. The air was thick with the stench of mildew and something else, something metallic and cloying. Jack risked a glance back. The creature was closer now, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. He heard a scream, high-pitched and full of terror. He turned back to see Mark stumble, his foot caught in the tracks. Before Jack could reach him, the creature was upon him, its long, sharp fingers digging into Mark's flesh. Mark screamed again, a sound that sent chills down Jack's spine. Jack didn't look back. He couldn't. He pushed himself harder, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for respite. He could hear the creature behind him, its raspy breathing echoing in the confined space. The tunnel opened up into another platform, this one brightly lit and modern. People milled about, oblivious to the horror that had just unfolded beneath their feet. Jack stumbled out onto the platform, his chest heaving, his clothes torn and covered in grime. He turned back, expecting to see the creature emerge from the darkness. But there was nothing. The tunnel gaped open, a black maw leading back into the abyss. He was safe, for now. But the world seemed different now, the familiar sounds and sights of the city tainted by the horror he had witnessed. He was haunted by Mark's screams, by the creature's glowing eyes. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would never be truly free of the nightmare that lurked beneath the rails. The train pulled into the station, its doors sliding open with a hiss. Jack boarded, his eyes darting around, searching for any sign of the creature. He knew it was futile, but he couldn't help himself. He was trapped, forever caught between two worlds, the world above and the nightmare below. The train sped away, carrying him back to the world he once knew. But Jack knew he would never be the same. The city declared the disappearance of his group a tragic accident, an unauthorized expedition into unsafe parts of the metro system. Jack didn't say otherwise. Who would believe him? But at night, in the silence of his apartment, he could still hear the scraping. And sometimes, when he passed by the metro late at night, the whispers would follow him, reminding him that the tunnels never forget.